Hello, my front-end friends, and welcome to the first edition of CSS Quarterly, your essential guide to staying current in what's now the very fast-moving world of CSS. This will be a pretty fast-paced walk through what's been happening in CSS, and we're going to be starting with some of the most exciting newly released features that you can experiment with now, including a few that I think you're really going to love, and a few that actually have the potential to completely change how we write CSS in the future. Then we're going to move on and talk about features that have recently hit baseline newly available, meaning all of the browser engines now support them, and I bet you there's going to be some features in there that you might be surprised to learn haven't been supported for as long as you might have thought. And finally, we're going to move on into the established features that recently have hit baseline widely available, which means that they've been supported in all of the browser engines for at least 30 months now. In future editions of the CSS Quarterly, I'm only going to be looking at the past 4 months, so an update every time we do one of these, but in this edition, because it's the first one, we're going to be going a little bit further back in time, and I won't be covering everything that's like a year old. I'm just going to be focusing on, I think, what are the most important things that we want to be keeping our eyes on, and I'm pretty sure one of the things people are going to be most excited about is this, which is custom selects. And this is just the future of CSS select fields, or not CSS, but HTML select fields that we can now style. And this is a demo by the Google team that have put this together, but you can see here we have images that are inside of the select, and you go down to here and there's there's other stuff in here. They're custom styled, and this is actually kind of like a tame example of some of the things that you can do with them. There's some really wild examples that are out there as well. But yeah, we're going to be able to fully customize selects, which is super, super exciting. And the cool thing with this too is it's backwards compatible. They are just using selects. Like if you look in here, it is a select that is there. And if I go to open this in Firefox where it's not actually supported yet, you can see it's just a regular select now. It just doesn't have the fancy styling and other stuff that's on there. So it doesn't completely break, which is really, really nice. So, you know, it's a nice progressive enhancement that we'd be able to use if we want to start using them a bit earlier before browsers fully support them. And next up, we have something that is a little bit controversial actually, but and also just very, very new, which is CSS only carousels. And a little bit of, or the controversy here is twofold, I think, is do we really want more carousels? And I think it comes down to if we're going to have them, we might as well get them to, be easy to do correctly. And then there's some people wondering about, like, is this the correct way to make people do them correctly? But it seems to be this is where things are going. And you can see this is all with just a little bit of HTML and CSS. I'm going to link down this down below. Lots of cool examples of these carousels. All of this is generated. I recently played with this a little bit. I didn't make anything too fancy, but I have played with it, and it's really, really neat, some of the stuff you can do. And so this demo page here that I think Adam is solely responsible for will be linked down in the description below if you do want to check it out. But yeah, carousels coming to the web, or not coming to the web. They've been here for a while, but easier to create carousels for better and worse, potentially, I guess. Next up, we're going to move on. Again, this is going to be fast-paced, more about awareness of features, and this is one of the ones that I think will actually completely change how we write CSS, which is CSS mixins and functions. And this is very early days, and this is the link. This is from Miriam Susan, who wrote this together, which is an explainer on them. And in the description down below, there'll also be a link to a video by Dmitry Mayorov, who did a nice little explainer introduction to them with some practical examples. And if you just like CSS content and I don't give enough for you, definitely follow his channel as well. Yeah, but this is really interesting where it's, if you've seen preprocessors like Sass before, these be familiar to you, where we'll be able to create functions and mixins with CSS. And the potential for this combined with things like custom properties and other stuff, like it really, really does have the potential to completely alter how we write CSS. And I'm following this one really closely, and it's going to be really interesting once it starts landing in browsers and more. It's in Chrome right now, though I think it's behind a flag in Canary. I have to check it out. I haven't played with them yet, so you might have to go into Canary behind a flag, look into it if you want to play with them. But there's the momentum behind these to start making their way into browsers, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this actually changes things in the future from now. Another thing that I have been playing with is anchor positioning, and I think anchor positioning is one of those things where we can anchor elements to other elements, and if there's not enough room, they'll jump out of the way, and you can do all of that with just a few lines of CSS. I've talked about this before, and all we need to really do is give something an anchor name, and that lets you anchor other elements to it. And what's really exciting about anchor positioning is that like I have my button here and I'm anchoring this element over here to that button. So we don't have to do like absolute position and then relative on the parent to be able to connect an item to another item. We don't have to come in with JavaScript third-party things to be able to do, you know, this type of thing, or tooltips and other stuff where you just want to jump out of the way. The browser can figure that out. We can provide the fallbacks and it's going to do it. And it's really, really cool. So yeah, anchor positioning is one of those things that I think developers are going to love because it just makes life so much easier. And it's really easy to use as well, which is really cool. Though if you start getting into the more advanced stuff you can do with it, you might start running into a few edge cases and things that drive you a little bit nuts, but the basics of it are just wonderful. I'm so happy that we have it. Another thing, this isn't so cutting edge, it's just not something that's yet in all browsers, is view transitions. This is a demo for a single page view transition where I can do some nice little filtering animations. Nothing too fancy here, we're just doing crossfading, but then it like slides in and slides out when we're going between the different ones that are here, which is kind of neat how this works. And there's really not much work I had to do for this. All I'm doing is like remove display nunning and not display nunning, and I'm running the update through a start view transition here in my JavaScript, and it just works. And the single page view transitions for DOM manipulations are just really incredibly easy to do. And of course we have multi-page view transitions now as well, which the basics of are really simple, but that can potentially get more complicated, and they're doing more work on that front to try and make it a little bit easier too. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about it, there is a really nice blog on the Chrome for Developers blog here by Bramis, who walks us through both the cross document and same document view transitions. And like this is an example of a cross document one where you can just do page fades, but you can also have things change completely, like you can see right there, and stuff when you're jumping between different pages, which is really, really neat. And I actually had Bramis join me for a video as well where we walk through multi-page view transitions. So if you'd like to check that out, it is linked in the description as well. Moving on from that, this one goes under the radar a little bit more, but it's the text box trim. And you might be going, oh, I haven't heard of that, or maybe you have a little bit, but this is where fonts always have all this extra space on them, and we're actually going to be able to get rid of that space now. And I'm sure you've run into situations, even if like padding on a button, where the equal padding on the top of the button doesn't make your button actually balanced. So it's going to help with that, but so many other things too. Like if you have cards and you want things to actually align easier or not have extra padding on the top that looks like it, and we'll have full control over where things are cutting. And I've played around with this a little bit just to see. You can see it's in Chrome 128 behind a flag right now, and Safari is working on it as well. And actually I think it might be a little bit further along there, but yeah, it's really, really neat. Here's the example of the button where you actually get the spacing that you thought you would, and you can do it for other things as well, for gaps between elements and other that when you do gap and then you actually get equal spacing. Anyway, a nice little like better layout-y stuff with less finicky numbers and like magic numbering things to get them to align anymore, which is gonna be really, really handy. Next up is another one that I think is actually going to change how we write CSS completely, and it's using custom attributes. And custom attribute, or the attribute function, has been around for a long time, but it hasn't been at its full potential until what we're getting now. And what we're doing now is, you can see here, it looks kind of weird, but I'm using this custom attribute in here. So I'm saying get the attribute of data columns, which is going to be a number, so you have to say what the type is. And then here I have data columns 3, and then you can see this first one has 3 columns. And then if I go down to this one, data columns 4, data column 6, and then I have 6 columns. And you don't actually, you could do a custom function as well. So I could say columns 6, and this last one should continue to work when my code pen updates. There you go. So depending on how you want to do it, this will be very useful for things like utility classes, and will probably be used a lot for that type of thing. But it's also really handy that I can have a single declaration in my CSS and then have the ability to manipulate that instead of through a whole bunch of having to have different modifier classes, like 10 modifier classes. I can just use a single data attribute or custom attribute to be able to just change the value in something. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of different ways that people end up using this, from just like, oh, I'm using this instead of simple utility classes, to other people probably pushing things much further and using them in really creative ways. And I'm looking forward to seeing what those smart people do with these and where they go with them. Switching gears from something that's going to change how we write CSS to just another one of those things that developers wish we've had forever, is doing a transition from display none to not display none. And so here's the example with like my modal sliding in and out, where I actually have a different animation coming in from different directions, and it's happening because I'm actually doing a transition on my display, which is really, really cool. And to allow this to happen, we just use a transition behavior of allow-discrete. This is a really nice progressive enhancement as well, because if browsers don't support it, it just will appear and disappear. Not the end of the world, but in browsers that do support it, we get a nice little animation, fade in, whatever you actually want to do. And really, really simple. There's a few little things with it, because along with that, you do have to also bring in a starting style. So I'm not going to deep dive it now. Again, there's links to everything down below if you want to learn more about being able to do this, but I'm really just going from a display of none to a display of block, and it's animating without any issues. So yeah, super easy to do now, which is fantastic. And the last thing in terms of the cutting edge brand new things that are coming is something that's only being discussed right now. We haven't even got anything in browsers yet, which is item flow. And it's this new unified concept for layouts, which is this idea, and this has been spurred along by all the talk of masonry and what are we doing with masonry, and there's different ideas on how that should be approached. And this is a third path that's emerged. And so this is on the WebKit blog where they're talking about it, and some of the ideas where it's this idea of having, let's go down a little bit here, instead of having, say, a flex wrap and having your grid auto flow, like what if we made things that could work for both situations, with item direction and item wrap and item pack and these different properties and values that would work in similar ways across the different layout modes. It's really interesting. I'd encourage you to come and read this post, as once again linked in the description below. But yeah, unifying things. And I think for me, the TLDR of my thoughts on this are it's a really good idea if we can get it to work in a way that makes sense, because I've seen a lot of developers pick either grid or flexbox and rely way too heavily on that because they feel like they understand that, and the other thing is too big of a departure. Anytime they try using it, it's not what they're familiar with, so they end up going back to what they know, even though it ends up being a lot more work for them. So if we can come up with something that there's more similar concepts or property values that are going across the two of them, it might help developers actually pick the better tool for the job, depending what they're running into. And if you want more thoughts on this, I actually talked about it for about 20 minutes over on my second channel. So I'll link that down in the description below, where I just sort of went through this post and rambled on about what I think about all of it. So out of all of those, I'm really curious which one of them you're most excited by. And if I missed any new features that are coming that I didn't talk about that I should have, please also let me know down in the description below. Now, moving into the next section of this update, we're going to be looking at features that have hit baseline newly available, which means that they've hit baseline support. So they're available in every browser engine, but they haven't been around that long yet. And we'll talk more about how long that long is. I think I mentioned it in the intro anyway. But yeah, these are in all the browsers, but just more recently than, they haven't been around super long in every browser engine. And for this edition, I'm going to look at ones that hit this within 2024, and it won't be a complete list. It's only going to be some of the ones that are most useful in my book. And the very first one we're going to take a look at is popover. And I love popover. It's really, really useful. So I have a button that has a popover target. It's looking at an ID. And then right here, I have a div with that ID, and it has a popover attribute on it. And then when I click on the button, this happens. It opens the popover. There's no JavaScript involved in this at all. It just opens and closes, and I don't have to do anything to make that happen. It comes with a light dismiss. So if I click outside of it, it will disappear. Or if I push escape, it will go away as well. And this is just, for me, just really super handy. It's not a modal. We'll talk more about modals later. This is really just a popover, so we still, it's a light dismiss and all of that, but yeah, insanely easy to use, which for me is always a big win right there. The next one is something that, a small feature that probably you'll be happy that you have, which is scrollbar-gutter. And scrollbar-gutter, I think a lot of people might not have heard of this, but let's take off this stable right now. And when the stable's not there, and I'm sure you've seen this on pages like this one that I have a scroll bar, so you can see my scroll bar up and down. And let's make this page a bit bigger so the scroll bar is gone, and I'm just going to line up some text so it's like really close to the edge because this is like a silly demo. But you can see the word ulam here. And if I come and add more text to this page, the content is going to shift a little bit. So you can see it all shifted there. And that's because there was no scroll bar, and then the scroll bar comes in, so it shifts. And you can even see this with like navigation sometimes, where like all of a sudden the navigation, like you have a menu or something that like shifts over, comes in and out because you have a scroll bar on some pages and not on other pages. And it can be a little bit annoying when like the element that people are dealing with on the right side is moving back and forth. If we do a scrollbar-gutter stable, and you can have it, you can decide what side this is happening on as well. But if we have the stable on there, it's going to reserve the space for a scroll bar, even if there's no scroll bar on the page. So if I comment these back out again, when we take a look at it, you see the content never jumps. That ulam, like right there, let's put it like this again. So like as the page is getting bigger or smaller, there's always the space reserved down the right side for your scroll bar right there, which is just handy. So if you ever have those jumping pages that move a little bit when there is a scroll bar on, this could be the type of thing you're looking for. And just really quickly, if you're on a Mac, I would actually encourage you to go into your settings and turn the scroll bar on, just because a lot of Windows users have a scroll bar that's usually there. And when you're on a Mac, you don't always realize it because they have like that floating scroll bar instead. And it just changes, you might not be accommodating some of the situations that are coming up, especially if you're doing things like 100 viewport width and other things like that. Next up, I'm not going to do much of a demo on this one because I think a lot of people know it. Backdrop filter. Only is, you can even see here, can I use, by the way, if you do go to caniuse.com, it does tell you what the baseline support, or if something is newly available, or if it's something that is widely available. And you can see here, it is only newly available. It hasn't been in all the browsers for all that long. And this is thanks to it needing a prefix in Safari for a really long time. So it's been in Safari since 2015, but it was only in 2024 that they dropped the prefix on it, with Safari 18 right there. And Firefox has only supported it since 2022 as well, though that's been 3 years now. So yeah, just be aware that you need the prefix on there still if you want to support Safari. If you're using something that automatically adds it, that's fine. But yeah, I think this is one of those things that people don't necessarily realize hasn't been as widely supported as they thought, at least the non-prefixed version of it. Next up is relative colors. And if you don't know about relative colors, just really, really fast, it's really, really cool. And we're going to be looking at this like block of text that's there that's kind of transparent. And I only have 3 colors up here that I can use, but down here, I have that example is saying it's an HSL color from, in this case, red, and my lightness is only 30%, so this would be an HSL, but I'm saying no, the lightness isn't the same lightness, it's dropping to 30%, and I'm putting a different opacity on it. So if I put this to 1, it goes to a solid color. And you can even do this with your variables. So I can say my color brand. So I can say an HSL value from var color brand that is going to be a bit darker, and we're going to drop the opacity on it, and it just works. It's so cool. And this is one of those things where it's a little bit long to write out. Once we have custom functions, be a lot easier as well, because we could just set the color, set the opacity, and this would be sort of the behind the scenes part that would be going on as well. And there's a lot more you can do with relative colors, but just being able to drop the opacity on any color you want, I think is pretty neat. Next is one that I didn't realize there was support for until like last week, which is alternative text for CSS generated content. This is if you're doing like a before or after pseudo element and use the content property, we can put in you put a / and then you can put in something like some actual text that is the alt text for that thing, which is super cool. And I knew they were working on this. I just didn't realize that all the browsers had actually implemented it yet. Now, this said, I am including this article from Adrian Rosselli here that just talks a little bit about some of the potential issues that can also come up with it. And when it comes to the browser support, this was last updated December, so it's not that long ago, but I think that some of the issues might have been solved, but I haven't done any of the testing myself. But just if you do want to start using this, I think it's a really good thing to do. But you just might want to make sure that it's working as you expect in all the browsers as well. Now, up next is one that I haven't used a ton of, but it's the stepped math functions that are baseline now. And this is the round function. Let's make this a little bit bigger. We have the round function, which is out of all of these 3, it's one that I actually have played with. The round function, which just allows us to round up and down to things. So it's the same, you can see here, it's like your math ceiling, your math floor, your math round, and your math trunk right there. So if you've been doing things like that in JavaScript to round something that you needed in CSS, you can now do it directly in CSS with the round function. And we also have the rem and mod functions. I'm not a fan of the rem function because it's weird having a rem function and a rem unit, but whatever. They work similar to JavaScript's remainder operator right there. So it returns 3 pixels. In this case with the rem, the difference between the two functions is rem always takes the sign of the dividend. Therefore, if the first value is positive, the return value will be positive. The mod function takes the sign of the divisor instead. So I'm not someone who does weird math stuff very often, but I'm sure there's lots of people who are like, oh, I wish this has been in CSS longer and have some cool ideas for it. Round, I can think of stuff to do about with it. But yeah, that is that. But yeah, the stepped math functions, and there's the other ones too, right? We have trig in CSS too. I don't have a page for it, but I'm pretty sure it's roughly the same stage as these ones as well in terms of browser support. So yeah, trig in CSS, if you have any needs for that, you can do it now. Next up, we're going to go over to my HTML and CSS tip of the week, which if you don't know about it, will be linked in the description down below. Just a weekly tip on an HTML or CSS thing that not enough people use. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because if we come in here and let's go and just grab my title and go and look at the CSS that's on here. And we're going to see this color of foreground 1. And if I click on foreground 1 is using the light dark function. And you see it's not using this one, it's using this darker color over here. And the reason it's doing this is I'm saying I have a light color and a dark color. This is the light version of it. This is the dark version of it. And the way you're going to work is look at the browser settings. And if we're in a light theme, we're going to use the light one. And if it's dark, we're using the dark one. And now some of this is coming because on my HTML element itself, I do have the, let's go and find it, the color scheme here of light dark. So that just means the system settings are deciding which theme we're going to be using as well. So that says we're either using a light or dark based on the user's system preferences. And then from there, it just chooses the two of them. So you don't need to use like a media query to switch. You just provide the two values. It picks the one depending on the situation, which is really, really neat and lets us do just really easy color theming. So everything changes depending on if we're in our light or our system mode or our dark mode. Well, dark and system for me will be the same. But yeah, really, really neat. It makes life a lot easier when you're doing your color theming. Next up is one I've talked about a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it's text wrap balance and text wrap pretty. So if we do a text wrap balance, if we look here, everything looks fine, and then when it jumps to here, it looks fine, right? So no problems with this heading at all. If I turn off the balance, however, we have a less balanced heading where this typography word is on its own. In this case, this heading, it's not that bad. But if you had like a short word over here and you just get the one little word there, it can look weird. So by using the text wrap balance, it helps balance things out. And of course, we also have the text wrap pretty that we can use on paragraphs. And so if we look over here, I have this word lonesome all on its lonesome. And if I do a text wrap pretty, it's no longer all on its lonesome anymore. It always ensures that there's at least 2 words whenever we get a line break when we have longer text. And the idea with text wrap pretty is it's for longer running text, whereas text wrap balance is for when you have like headings and other things where there's less lines of text. And the last one, and this one really surprised me that it's only at widely available, is the AVIF format. Do you know the AVIF format is only at widely available now? It is. So if you've been using AVIF a lot, which if you don't know about it, is just another image format that is generally a bit better at compression than WebP. It is now in all of the browsers, but it's only newly available. So do make sure you have fallbacks if you are using it. And now we're going to move on over into the baseline widely supported, which again means that every browser engine supports these features and has supported them for at least 30 months now. So we're entering into the territory where it means it's probably pretty safe to use in production without it having to be something like a progressive enhancement or having to use a polyfill or something like that. You can just probably safely use it, but do be careful with it because some people need much higher support for a feature before they consider it something that they'd actually use in production. So it really depends on the team, the project, the audience that you have, and everything else. For me, I'd be very happy using them if I'm doing it for projects I'm doing, because it's developers who follow me who are usually on pretty up-to-date browsers. Whereas if you have a very generic audience, then maybe you need a little bit better support, but it's still a really nice indicator, because 30 months in all the browser engines, I think, is it's a nice cutoff that at least makes you feel a little bit safer about using some of these. Very quickly though, before we jump into those, I just want to say that if you're someone who's been looking to step up your CSS game, I have several free and premium courses like CSS Demystified, which is for people who have been writing CSS for a little bit now, and they understand how it works in theory, but they still struggle with it more than they feel like they should. The course dives into understanding why CSS works the way it does, so that instead of fighting with it, you can actually start writing it with confidence. The link for that is down in my description if you want to know more about it, and there's also a link to my main courses page as well if you're looking for some of my free courses or more of an introduction course, or I also have a very advanced course called Beyond CSS as well that you might be interested in. But now let's jump on over into our baseline widely supported features. The first one is overflow clip, and overflow clip is awesome. So here I have a menu that's coming out the side of my page, but the problem is when it's that way, it's actually causing some overflow. And that sucks, right? And that's happening, and it's in my header right now. And so the first thing people usually do is they come in their header and they do an overflow X of hidden because they want to hide where it's going off on. Except when you do that, then all of a sudden you get this weird scroll bar showing up inside the element itself. And then if that's really weird. And it's because of the way overflow hidden works. It changes the default in the other direction from being an overflow of visible to an overflow of auto, which is why we're all of a sudden getting a scroll bar. And instead of that, now we can do an overflow of clip. And this is much better than doing it on the body, where we, is really common on the body, overflow X of hidden, but that can potentially run you into some really strange issues every now and then, including one that drove me bananas where I had 2 scroll bars on my page. So by doing this, an overflow clip instead, it works how you'd expect it to work, where I'm not getting any extra overflow in one way, I'm not getting any scroll bars on my body left and right, it just works the way I'd want it to. There are a few differences between clip and hidden, so you might not go like, oh, I'm forgetting hidden even exists, I'm only going to use clip from now on in the future. Clip is my new default, but you might run into a few things along the way that don't work how you wanted them to, and then you have to revert back to using the overflow of hidden instead. Now another one is overscroll behavior that I don't think enough people use, and there's a few good use cases for overscroll behavior. And that's like if I'm scrolling in, this is a nice example in the MDM page, where when I'm scrolling on this little one inside, as I'm using my mouse wheel, and this would be the same, like you're flicking down, right? On a touch device, when you hit the bottom, it just keeps on scrolling. Whereas if you do an overflow or overscroll behavior of contain, all of a sudden, as long as I'm only dealing with this, even when I get to the bottom, I can't continue scrolling outside of that element, right? I'm stuck in that element until my mouse comes outside of there, and then that scrolls again. And we also have the none, which if we come and take a look really, really fast here, just the auto is the way it normally works. The contain will keep that default bounce effect that you'll get on touch devices, especially if you have it on like the whole thing where it can like pull down a little further and then come back up. But it won't cause, but no scrolling in neighboring scrolling areas. Underlying elements won't scroll, and it disables native browser navigation, including the vertical pull to refresh. So that is important to make sure you potentially could be preventing that, which you'd want to be careful with. And then there's the none, which just means there's nothing. So you don't even get that like squishy extra pull down that you'd get on a touch device. Next up is one that I don't think people even know about, which is the text align last. And I get why they don't know about it, because why would you do this? It's kind of weird aligning your last line of text differently. I am using start and end. This could be also a left and a right. The start and end are the logical properties, left and right are the physical properties. So you could do that. You could use something like a justify, which is where I think it makes more sense to be able to change the bottom line. And then I could do like a center here. I'd already say be careful with justify text in general. It's really hard to get it right on the web. It tends to be bad because you can't control the spacing very well. And you get what you call rivers going through your text a lot of the time, so be very careful with justify text. And you can technically put the justify here, but please don't do it, because oh my goodness, that's just really, really bad. right? So like maybe here it looks fine, and then it just breaks and I get like the words all the way on the extremes. So I'm sure maybe you can come up with some good creative use cases for it, but avoid justify probably, and use a few other things with it that might actually make sense. Another one that has gained support now is, and I've sort of mentioned this really quickly, but it's our color scheme. So color scheme of dark, and then we can also switch that over to light if we want. The nice thing with this, which I don't have in this demo that we have right here, is that it changes all the user agent styles from a light theme to a dark theme. So it's going to handle things like scroll bars, inputs, buttons, and automatically switch those over. So I always encourage using this. If you're if I'm creating a dark only site, I'm actually going to come in with a color theme of dark just to set all the user agent styles that way to begin with. So then I don't have to worry about, forgetting something stupid or silly along the way, or just having a really bright scroll bar on my dark site or something like that. So yeah, a nice, really quick win there. Does rely on the system settings to do it. And I will say that if you are going to go this route and do both themes, you also do want a manual way for users to be able to switch between the two. Really, really important. But it's nice that this has wide support now. So do love that. Another one is cascade layers. And this is one of those ones that you couldn't really use unless browser support was there. And I'm actually seeing this in production now, which is really, really cool. Like production real sites, people are starting to use it, and I'm trying to steal ideas and see how people use them. But as a really quick example here of why cascade layers could be useful is I'm setting up a whole bunch of layers here, where I have my layout layer followed by my components layer. So this is setting the importance of my layers basically. So like how they layer one on top of the other. Utilities is the most important one. And then here on my components, I have a color on my button. Right, so dot button has this color, and you can see that's coming up in my navigation and down over here. If I come and look in my layout layer, I have this crazy long selector here choosing all of my links. I wouldn't actually do this, but we have just really high specificity setting the color on this. And because like normally this would force these buttons here, because those buttons are just regular links that are right here, this would win and it would overwrite my button styling. But because of layers, I don't have to worry about the specificity of those other things. I know this component is always going to look exactly this way unless I were to have a utility class also on there that's shifting it. So you can have your generic things actually use higher specificity, and then your components and other things, you don't have to worry about those getting in the way, which I really, really like. So a few quick wins and other things right there. And so it can just make it a lot easier to write CSS without running into things like specificity problems. The only thing is it does take a little bit of forethought into how everything is going to be organized. But yeah, I do think it's worth it these days to at least start playing with it if you haven't looked at it yet. And this last one we're going to look at, I'm super happy has reached widely supported, which is dialogs and modals. And so here, did you know I have a newsletter? Sign up, and we get a sign up form. Let's ignore the giant one I have right here. But I have this sign up form that's coming in, and this is different from the pop-up that we looked in the first one, because this is a modal rather than a pop-up or a popover. And that means that you can see it's coming in with the backdrop on there, so it's hiding the background. And if I click around, I can't select anything behind it. This is automatically happening. I don't need any JavaScript or anything else to have this is the only thing the user can interact with until they close it. And it's super easy to do this. We just have the show modal here and then a modal close here. That's it. And well, that's not quite it. I do have the dialog here, so I'm using a dialog to do this. And then when we click, we do dialog, show modal, and it shows up, and then we can close it. Really, really super easy to do. There is also a show method instead of a show modal method. There is a difference between the two of them. The show, you can see I can actually still interact with the content behind it. So it depends what you're after and what type of modal you're wanting to do. And actually with this one, if I push escape, it doesn't actually close. Whereas if I use the show modal instead, and we bring that back in, once it's loaded in, if I push escape, it will also close the modal right there. And that has been a whole bunch of CSS. There's links to demos, extra articles, and a whole bunch more down below. So if there's anything that caught your eye that you want to learn more about, please go look down below to find that information. And with that, I would like to thank my enablers of awesome, Andrew, Simon, and Tim, as well as all my patrons and channel members for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.